Going Nitrosites, it is your boy the Nitro General here, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video we are going to be talking about the Pokemon Sword and Shield first expansion pass, the Isle of Armour. Now, this was going to be a review, but instead of making a total review of it, I'm just going to be talking about it, because yes, I will be reviewing it, but I also want to give some suggestions and stuff to you guys. It has currently been out for 12 hours. I have currently played through it twice, one on Pokemon Sword and one on Pokemon Shield, so I can get both forms of Urshifu on one copy. I will talk about my struggles with doing that in a little bit. But yeah, so before we really get into the main, review kind of the DLC, I just want to give you guys a couple suggestions before you just go into the DLC. Now, luckily, one of my favorite things about Sword and Shield in general is that there is level scaling, which if you guys don't know what that means that if you go into the wild area or any area like the wild area with your Pokemon, the Pokemon that you encounter will be scaled to your level. So if you go in there with a level 10, you're going to be finding like level 10 but into 20s. If you go in there with like level 60s, you're going to be finding like level 60, 70 Pokemon in the grass. And it's the same with the Isle of Armour. So relatively where you are in the entire game, you do not have to worry about it being too easy or too hard, unless you were like me and had level 100 Pokemon to go in there. Then it's pretty easy because they cap out at like level 70. Yeah, so you can go in at any point in the game, at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, and still have the exact same. However, coming from somebody who played it on a copy where they had beaten the game, and coming from somebody who also played it on another copy where they had not one gym badge, or gym, is it? Yeah, gym badge. There are gym badges in this. Yeah, so, it is much easier to do when you beat the game. And here's why. If you guys have not got the game yet, or if you guys have not beaten the game yet, as long as you are decently far into the game, I would suggest starting it. If you guys have not started it, I would suggest getting up to the point that you can get the bike, or even better, getting up to the point where you can get the bike that can drive on water, because you can't complete the story until you can get the bike that rides on water. And it's not the biggest deal, because you can complete the main story of the Isle of Armour without the water bike, but you can't Gigantamax Urshifu until you get the water bike. So go ahead and play it as long as you have the bike, and I highly suggest getting the bike, because I got super far into it on my second copy on Pokemon Sword, because Shield's my main copy, without even getting the bike, and it was terrible having to run around the entire place, because you can't, or at least getting to the point where you can get the Corviknight taxi, which I believe is just getting to Motostoke. I believe once you get to Motostoke, you will get the access to the Corviknight taxi, and that just allows you to fly around to there. There are like 3 or 4 different flying or Corviknight taxi spots on the island, so that is pretty good. There's one at the train station, there's one at Mustard's fighting place, and then there's a couple more. I think there might be one at the Water Town, one at the Dark Tower, too. But let me tell you, you are much better off doing this if you have beaten the game. Now, if you have level 100 Pokemon, like I did, it's going to be easy, because you are just going to be one-shotting everything. But if you go in at the beginning of the game, then everything is going to be scaled to your level, and you're going to basically have a little bit of a challenge. Now, I didn't really want too much of a challenge going through it the second time, because I just wanted the second form of Urshifu, but playing through it again, I would probably get up to the point where I could get the water bike and then go back through it, because at that point in the game, you will be able to do the whole thing of the Isle of Armour, and you will have a decent challenge doing it, because your Pokemon won't be extremely overleveled or underleveled. Well, I guess underleveled isn't really a thing for the Isle of Armour, because like I said, there's level scaling. So, but there is the thing of over leveling, because the Pokemon are going to be higher. And if you play through it play through it later in the game, when you fight the rival, whatever rival it is first, they're going to have like first stage evolution Pokemon at level scale to whatever your level is. So like when I fought her, she had like he had a Galarian Slowpoke at like level 60. And when I fought Clara, she had a Venipede at level 60, which is crazy because they aren't going to be doing anything. They aren't going to be a challenge at all anyways because they're first stage Pokemon. But as you fight them later in the game, they evolve, which some of their Pokemon never fully evolve. So yeah, it's not that much of a challenge, which is kind of sucks because I was hoping for a little bit more of a challenge. But again, it is kind of marketing towards just getting new Pokemon rather than that. So yeah. So my suggestion to you guys that if you do have it, to not play it until you get the water bike or at least the availability to get the Corviknight taxi, because if you don't have the Corviknight taxi, then you're gonna it's just gonna suck. But I would suggest getting farther into the game, as I will talk about here in a minute. Is that I'm going to try to not spoil too many plot points. There really isn't any big plot points, as I will talk about here in another minute. But yeah, so in order to evolve Kubfu, in order to take on the towers, you need to have max friendship on Kubfu, which is a huge kick in the nuts. In order to even get him to take on the tower, you have to have him at least level 70. So if he's not level 70, then you're shit out of luck and you can't do it. And if you're at an early point in the game, it is so hard to get him to level 70. Luckily, I have both copies of the game, so I can get him full friendship, transfer him over to my other copy, give him a bunch of the candies that I have saved up, get him to level 100, and bring him back to it, and then destroy the towers. But this is what I need to tell you guys. If you are not at a decent point in the game, getting him max friendship is the worst thing in the world, because I have never transferred a Pokemon over, gotten him full friendship, and transferred him back to evolve him onto a different copy of the game until today. And I didn't realize that by doing that, it resets the happiness. So you can't transfer them to another copy, give them max happiness, bring them back, and expect them to have the same amount of happiness. They don't. Luckily, I found that out before I did too much training and stuff with them on the other copy, so it wasn't too much of a stress. But the biggest thing is that the easiest way to gain happiness in Pokemon Sword and Shield is getting the berries from the berry trees. But as you guys know, there's no way to respawn them until you are literally one full day. And if you mess with your clock, then it messes up the time-related events like the berry trees and stuff, and the dens from spawning and stuff like that. So if you mess with your clock, it just messes up the game in general. And it really sucks because I went through the entirety of the wild area in the main part of the Galar region with no bike, just walking all the way to the edge, got a bunch of berries, thought that was enough, took them back to Mustard. Mustard's like, that's not enough. I had to go all the way back to the wild area, get a bunch more berries, go all the way back to Mustard for him just to tell me again that there is not enough happiness. And if you are not in a decent point in the game where you can go to a ton of different berry trees, it is going to take a while. Because after that, I had to do max raid battles to get XP candies to give him, and just have him at the front of your party, because something happens at the end of this that I'm going to talk about later that also increases his friendship with you. Luckily, I was doing a bunch of max raid battles, and then eventually I ran into a random Pokemon, and you send them out, and they kind of like move a little bit when sends them out, kind of like, so you know they have full friendship. I don't really know how to describe it, but you guys will know when you see it, because he doesn't do the little animation until you send it out. No, every Pokemon does the same animation. Once you get full friendship, you send them out, they kind of like move back and forth a little bit, and that's how you know they have full friendship. So luckily I had ran into a random Pokemon and he did that, so I had been walking I don't know how long with him, and it just got to the point. But this took me probably 2 to 3 hours to do. And it sucked because I had not progressed even to Motostoke yet. So beyond that, I would have. I was thinking about just playing through the story, just using Kung Fu, just enough to get him happiness because it is so hard. So my only suggestion is for you guys is to not even play the DLC until you get farther into the game, because otherwise you are going to have such a trouble doing anything in the game. And I would suggest doing it before you get your Pokemon to level 100, or not have a team of level 100 Pokemon, because then it just makes it too easy. Luckily, I mean, not luckily, but when I played through it the first time, I didn't really care too much about having a challenge. I just kind of wanted to see the story, everything like that, and I just used level 100 Pokemon, just one-shot everything, literally. But yeah. So let's get into the review portion of this. And before I get to the good things, I do want to talk about the few things that I did not like. Now, if you guys have been watching my channel for however long, you know that I was not a big fan of the Pokemon or the DLC when it first came out. But it wasn't the DLC that I wasn't a fan of. It was the fact that they made us pay for it when it should have been part of the game in the first place. Now, I know they're just trying to drag it out a little bit more so they don't have to release a new Pokemon title this year, and that is okay. You know, that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that they're making us pay $30 for the DLC, and not $30 for both games, $30 per game. So if you want to be able to get both forms of Urshifu without trading with somebody, you have to pay $60, enough for a whole nother copy of the game anyways, just to get that. And they already made you pay for the game. They already made you pay for online. They already made you pay for Pokemon Home. That is 3 things that you have never had to pay for. Well, I shouldn't say never, because... Well, one thing that you've never had to pay for, which is online. You've never had to pay for a DLC, because this is the first Pokemon game that ever had a DLC. You always had to pay for the game in general, obviously. But, you never had to pay for Pokemon Home because it didn't exist. However, Pokemon Bank was only $5 for a year, rather than Pokemon Home is like $18 per year. And it still isn't terribly expensive, and it does a little bit more, but at the same time, it just sucks that you have to pay for it at all. And I'm still irritated that you have to pay for it, because I paid $60 so I could play through the DLC twice. And the biggest thing for me is that you paid this much for 0 content, hardly. The Isle of Armour does not give you anything, really. You get a little bit of a story to get Kubfu and Urshifu that takes you probably, if you're decently far into the game, takes you probably, I don't know, 2 hours, maybe. If you take the time to explore and everything, then maybe, like I did, then you can probably expand it to maybe 3 hours worth of content to play through. And no new Pokemon at all. I had a video that I was doing last night that I was going to post before Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, but I ended up scrapping the video because it really didn't matter, because by the time anybody watched the video, the DLC probably would have already been out. So I should have done the video earlier, but I didn't. But in that video, I talked about how I 100% guaranteed that we'd get at least one other new Pokemon, or at least one other new Galarian form besides Galarian Slowpoke. We didn't get jack. We did not get nothing but the original 100 and whatever Pokemon that they were bringing back that they should have just left in the game originally. They brought back they brought back old Pokemon, and nothing new. You got Kubfu and Urshifu, Galarian Slowpoke and Galarian Slowbro, and that is it. That is it. No new Galarian forms, no new Pokemon. They couldn't even just make one new Pokemon for the Isle of Armour. I don't care if they took one of the old Pokemon that they released in Sword and Shield and waited to release that until the Isle of Armour. Because wouldn't it make sense that there would be at least one species of Pokemon they could only get on the Isle of Armour? Yes. And that is apparently Galarian Slowpoke. Yet there is nothing else new. No other new Pokemon, nothing. And it kind of made me a little bit sad that I played through this entire DLC super excited to find at least a Galarian Pokemon, and there was not. Now, and this leads me to believe that we are not going to get any new Pokemon or any new Galarian forms for the Crown Tundra either, because we are getting new Galarian forms for the birds, we're getting 2 new Regis, and we're getting Calyrex. So, with those new Pokemon, I mean, if they didn't release any new ones in the Crown Tundra or in the Isle of Armour, then they're probably not in the Crown Tundra. And it just kind of sucked because I was really hoping for new Pokemon, and there wasn't anything that we hadn't already seen. You know, I would have even preferred that they didn't show off Urshifu until the Isle of Armour to give us something to be excited about. But if they basically showed literally everything in all of the trailers, they showed us the Gigantamax forms for all the starters, the Kanto ones, and the Galarian ones. They showed us the G-Max for Urshifu. They showed us Urshifu. They showed us Cubfu. They showed us the towers. They showed us Galarian Slowpoke. They literally didn't show anything. So if you guys want to know what the story is or want to see any of the Isle of Armour, just watch the trailers because you aren't missing anything. Because they told us everything before the game even came out. They left nothing to be surprised about. Nothing. And that really irritated me that I spent the money I did for hardly any... for not a really interesting story, and no new Pokemon, nothing to even be surprised about, except for one thing. They did leave one thing to a surprise, which was the most redeeming quality of the Isle of Armour. Alright, so that is all the bad stuff I want to talk about. Oh, right, and the other bad thing I want to talk about was the whole having to get him full friendship and everything, because if you hadn't got to a decent point in the game where you could do that, then it's going to take a long time, and that really sucked. But yeah, so we are done talking about all the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff, because there are a lot of good things with these games, or with this DLC. It is really, really cool to see the new wild area and all the different areas. They did a really, really nice job of adding so many areas, except for a lot of the areas are just smaller. You know, you have a woods, you have a couple caves, you have a beachfront, you have a mountaintop, you have like a wild, just a regular like plains wild area, forest, all that kind of stuff. They have all of that in this. They're just not very big. But it is really, really cool, and it is really cool to see a lot of the old Pokemon running around the grass like Wild Talonflame. It is super cool to see the wild Wailords in the water being as huge as, you know, this is the first time that you ever see us to scale a Wailord in a Pokemon game, and it is so cool being able just to look out in the water and just see this giant whale. It is so cool when you're surfing around and you have the Sharpedos that jet through the water, and all of a sudden you just see like the water coming up, and you're like, what the hell is that? And all of a sudden it's just like a Sharpedo that comes through. That is awesome to see. And yeah, so that is super cool the way that they did that, and I really enjoy how I really thought that was really cool, the couple little trials that you had to do to get Cubfu, and it was really cool. The towers were a little bit of a letdown too, of just fighting one person on each floor, but yeah, so that was pretty cool too. And the whole making a... That is the other thing I really want to talk about, is making the soup to give your Pokemon Gigantamax powers really kind of alleviates any reason to do Pokemon dens, unless you're farming for TMs and stuff like that, because of the fact that you can get any Pokemon you want, Gigantamax abilities, as long as you can find the mushrooms, which are a little bit more difficult to get because you have to do them through the max raid battles too. But you can really just give any Pokemon you want Gigantamax powers. So I had the 3 shiny starters that I had shiny hunted for, and I have the 3 shiny Gigantamax starters, or 2 shiny Gigant. I don't have Rillaboom yet, but I had the 2. I have a Cinderace and an Inteleon Gigantamax shiny, because I had just easily shiny hunted for them and gave them the soup. So that's kind of cool, but at the same time it kind of takes out the fact of hunting for the Gigantamax form in the den, because all you have to do is just get the regular form, which is way easier to get, and then get the mushrooms, and, you know, there they are, the Gigantamax forms. But yeah, but now I want to talk to you guys about the one thing in this game, or in this DLC, that made me so happy and redeemed this entire DLC. Because I talked about this a while ago. I did one thing that I wish Pokemon would bring back, and one of them they did bring back, and it was something that I didn't actually think that they would do, but they did. And that is my favorite thing that any Pokemon game has ever done. And that is having your Pokemon follow you. And I am blown away that they even did this. Because once you get a point into the Isle of Armour, once he gives you Kung Fu, he'll be like, oh yeah, whatever Pokemon that you have at the front of your party, they can follow behind you. So then, any Pokemon that you want is just following behind you now. And it is so cool to see all these models. Now, it is not as cool as I was hoping, only because you've already seen a lot of the models of the Pokemon in the overworld, so really it's just them following you instead of just walking around randomly. But a lot of the Pokemon that you don't see in the overworld, or ones that don't spawn, like you aren't going to see a Populo in the overworld, but you can have it follow you, and that is super cool. And I love that, and that is the one thing. Now you can only do it at the Isle of Armour, but in a way that is a little bit better than having it done on the entirety of the game, because as long as you're on the Isle of Armour, you can always have your Pokemon following you, and that is super cool because it always added a way of bonding with the Pokemon, seeing its shiny form behind you if you have it shiny and everything like that. And when I mean any Pokemon can follow you, I mean any. Like, you can have a Pikachu follow you, you can have a Incineroar follow you, you can have a Zekrom or Reshiram or Magearna, because that's in the game now, or a Zeraora follow you around, ones that you would never see walking in the overworld at all, following you, and that is so cool too. So that is what brings it together for me. To be honest, if I had to give this a score on a 1 to 10 scale, it would probably be a 7. And it would probably be a 5 if the Pokemon wouldn't follow you, because that is just something I wanted them to bring back for so long, and it makes me happy that they do. And it does have some redeeming qualities, but the replayability of it is trash, because you can't, if you get another Kung Fu, you can't go back through the towers, and there's just so much that I was disappointed on. And to be honest, it leaves me even less disappointed or even less excited for the Crown Tundra, because I don't think that they are going to be giving us really anything more. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they will be giving us some more new Pokemon and stuff like that, but I figured that the only new Pokemon that they've been giving us are the ones that they've already showed off. And all I hope for is that they do not show everything in the trailers, because they showed off everything. You know, and it is just kind of weird that, you know, you play through the game, or the DLC, and Galarian Slowpoke, Galarian Slowbro, Kung Fu and Urshifu, the towers, all this kind of stuff, and nothing is a surprise, and that was kind of what... Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is that nothing was a surprise. You already knew everything going into the game, and my favorite thing is the Pokemon following you. So overall, I give it a 7 out of 10, and to be honest, if you are really interested in playing through the game, if you're really interested in getting Kung Fu or Urshifu, then get the DLC. I mean, it's $30, which is more than it should be, and you shouldn't have to pay for it at all, but at the same time, you do get access to those 2 Pokemon. Of course, you do not have to pay for the DLC to get any of the old Pokemon, because as long as you have them in Pokemon Home, you can transfer them over and use them. You can get traded from, other people can trade you the Pokemon. You can literally get any Pokemon from the DLC without actually having to buy the DLC, but you can't evolve Kung Fu into Urshifu unless you buy the DLC. You can't get Kung Fu or Urshifu unless you're traded it if you don't buy the DLC. But yeah, other than that, guys, that is it from me. I just kind of wanted to talk about my opinions on this whole DLC and stuff, because it just came out, and I didn't want to wait too many days, because otherwise everything's going to be everywhere. But to be honest, it is a real struggle, not being able to look up, what Pokemon spawn here, because it literally has only been out for 12 hours, and there's nothing online that shows anything about it. So, but other than that, guys, that is it for me. I really, really hope you guys like this kind of talk. But yeah, so that is it. There should be another video coming probably tomorrow night. Maybe it'll either be another team. It'll either be another Pokemon Showdown team builder, or just a battle video, depending on because there are some new Pokemon I kind of want to mess around with, but I don't know if I'll have time to get an entire team done by tomorrow night. But that is it from me, guys. I really, really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Nitro General out. Peace.